What is going on, guys? Zuko back with another Dragonflight video. How are you all doing? Get your coffee, etc., etc. Look at my amazing transmog. Who doesn't love this? I love this thing. If you're wondering, these are the Legion artifact weapons, so I'll get back to that later. But let's talk about Enhancement Shaman build number 2 I want to bring to you guys. This is the fire build. Again, if you've been with me since the Dragonflight beta days, then you will understand what this build is, but I do want to talk about it with you. I'll go through the talent selection. I'm going to compare this build a little bit to the Hailstorm Trinity build that I just did in the last video, and we're going to show some dungeon footage as well. So let's just jump right into the talents. Let me make a couple of points here just right off the bat. So number one, comparing this build to the Trinity build, which also obviously included Hailstorm, right? It's actually an incredibly similar setup to the Trinity build. It's literally just this talent that you change. I believe that's it. So that might seem really silly. It's like, well, then they're basically the same build. They're actually tremendously different in terms of what they accomplish. So the Trinity build that revolves around Frost Shock has a lot more consistent damage, right? And it also requires that third GCD. Builder, Spender, Frost Shock, right? You go Storm Strike, into your Spender with Chain Lightning, and then you get the Hailstorm buff, and you have to spend it with Frost Shock. With the Fire Nova build, you don't have that problem. You just go Builder, Spender, and Fire Nova is part of your AoE burst, basically. It's also a builder for you. So each eruption from Fire Nova will generate a Maelstrom weapon stack. Why? Because of Swirling Maelstrom. This covers Ice Strike and Hailstorm and Fire Nova if you're going to take it. So the two different styles of the builds basically say, okay, if I'm going Hailstorm, then I have a cooldown on Frost Shock of only 5 seconds. So every 5 seconds, I can basically, likely, I'll have a Hailstorm buff ready to go from my spenders, and I get to spend it. So every 5 seconds, I got to be pressing Frost Shock. So it's a little bit more demanding, the Trinity build, but it also generates more Maelstrom weapon stacks more consistently because it has a 5-second cooldown on Frost Shock versus the 13-second cooldown on Fire Nova. So Fire Nova has the ability to generate more Maelstrom weapon stacks in an AoE setting when you detonate it, but the Hailstorm will generate more over time, more consistently. Of course, also, the Hailstorm damage is capped to only 6 targets, whereas the Fire Nova damage is not really capped at all. Let's just call it uncapped AoE, because, like, each eruption of Fire Nova happens from each Flame Shock. You can have 6 Flame Shocks that all erupt and will hit up to 6 enemies each. So you can hit 36 enemies, basically. It's basically uncapped AoE. Let's just call it that, okay? So those are some of the main differences between these two. For, the Frost Shock version with Hailstorm, more consistent generation, and I'm going to argue more single target damage because Hailstorm buffs the damage of your Frost Shock. It also makes it cleave, but it just buffs the damage of the Frost Shock as well, which is a really big deal. So I think more single target damage with the Frost Shock Hailstorm build, but really, really big explosions, lots of big AoE damage with the Fire Nova build, and it can generate crazy Maelstrom weapon stacks on that AoE pack. So that's really, really good. Now, one thing that I'm going to take in my Fire Nova build to shore up its weakness, which I'm going to call one of its big weaknesses, is Maelstrom weapon stack generation on a single target. Because again, Fire Nova, each eruption of Fire Nova generates 1 Maelstrom weapon stack. So if you only have 1 target, you only get 1 eruption. So on a single target boss fight in Mythic Plus, where it's mostly single target, your Fire Nova isn't generating Maelstrom weapon stacks for you, and this fire build will struggle to generate Maelstrom weapon stacks in single target because you're not focused on Storm Strike with Storm Flurry. You're not getting Elemental Assault, which gives you Storm Strike a guaranteed chance to give you a Maelstrom weapon stack. You know, you're not taking Legacy. So the Hailstorm version, of course, generates more Maelstrom weapon stacks because of the increased amount of times. Like, for every 1 Fire Nova, you're casting Frost Shock 2.5 times. So every 2 Fire Novas, you get 5 Frost Shocks. That's a lot more Maelstrom weapon stack generation. So to shore that up, we're going to take Ice Strike. Now, if you don't want to take Ice Strike because it's like too many buttons to take, I understand your frustration. I really, really do. And I know some people are going to hate this idea. So if you really don't want to take this, you could instead get rid of this talent here and just go down and get Elemental Assault. And then you might have a chance of your Storm Strikes giving you a Maelstrom weapon stack. There's a 50% chance you'll get one. That's the other option for you. You could obviously put your points into a lot of other places, but if you take Ice Strike is a guaranteed chance to give you a Maelstrom weapon stack because of Swirling Currents. That's a really, really big deal on single target boss fights where you're struggling. As I've said, you're struggling to make up that difference. So, I think you should take Ice Strike with this build. The other big reason to take Ice Strike with this build is because of the elemental spirits that you're going to be having. So your wolves are going to be out like all the time. But what happens if you get 2 frost wolves? Most of your damage is coming from a Lava Lash with Hot Hand, your Fire Nova procs, and your Flame Shocks. That's like a good chunk of your damage. So what if you get 2 Ice Wolves, and you're doing 40% more frost damage? Yay! That doesn't do anything for me, right? Because I'm mostly doing fire damage. So unlike the Trinity build... Oh, sorry, guys. Let me just sub there. Unlike the Trinity build, which is weaving all 3 of the elements all the time, if you get the Frost Wolves for elementals for this build, you could be kind of screwed. So that's another reason why I think that Ice Strike is really, really good, because it means if you do have a Frost Wolf up, you can still press Ice Strike. And remember, Ice Strike will do a little bit of splash damage. After you press Crash Lightning, it causes your Storm Strike, Ice Strike, and Lava Lash to also splash damage if you hit a couple of enemies with Crash Lightning. So this is another really, really good thing to have. It's just basically insurance that no matter what doggos are up, you're going to get some extra frost damage there if you happen to have... If you get the worst case scenario and you have 2 Frost Wolves up. So let me show you the rotation really quick. It is a simpler rotation, but it starts out the exact same as every other build will start because we are running... Witch Doctor Ancestry. Let me just make one more point before I jump into the rotation. You're taking Primordial Wave. Okay, remember, Primordial Wave generates 10 Maelstrom weapon stacks when you press it, okay? Very, very important. Why is that important? Because Witch Doctor's Ancestry gives you 2 seconds off of Feral Spirits for every 1 Maelstrom weapon stack consumed. So you press Primordial Wave, it gives you 20 seconds off the cooldown of your wolves. So instead of it being a 1.5 minute cooldown, it becomes a 1 minute and 10 second cooldown. So always important to summon your wolves first and then Primordial Wave after, okay? Here's your big opening burst window. We're going to double Flame Tongue weapon. Remember to do that, excuse me. You can still do that. So you just put Flame Tongue on, and then you swap weapons and put Flame Tongue on again. Your opening window starts like this. Wolves into P-Wave. Spread the Flame Shock around. Then you want to do Lightning Bolt, because it's going to hit everybody that has Flame Shock on them. Then you want to go Fire Nova, and you're going to immediately have full Maelstrom weapon stacks again, and then you can go Chain Lightning. Ready? Here we go. I will do a video on the rotation in a separate video, but I don't want to take too long here, okay? So here we go. Wolves, P-Wave, spread it around. Lightning Bolt, okay? Then Fire Nova, then Chain Lightning. Okay, look at our damage right now. Then you're going to do like Sundering, and you're tab targeting through enemies to do your lashing, get your Lashing Flames debuff going. My Lava Lash is just off cooldown. My dogs are back already. Another Fire Nova's up. I'm not even playing this correctly, but you can see how this damage can start to go if you're playing it correctly. Now, if I run out of things to press in AoE, I can press Ice Strike. And Ice Strike is guaranteed to give me a Maelstrom weapon stack generator. Remember that. Very, very important. So that's how the rotation works. Okay? Yes, my Frost Shock is glowing, and I can press it. But in AoE, you're not going to want to press it as much. Again, I'll talk more about this in the rotation video. But look at the damage that we just did. Our Flame Shock is really, really high because of our Lashing Flames. We were tab targeting through enemies, okay? Fire Nova is huge. It does tons of damage in AoE. Lava Lash is doing damage. Lightning Bolt did damage. Chain Lightning did tons of damage. So it's really, really good. The build is really fun, and it can absolutely slap enemies down if you're playing it correctly. Let me jump into the video footage here, and let's get this going. So I don't want to take up your entire day. Again, there's the talents that I'm looking at. So let me just make a few points here while the footage is running in the background there. Number one, the AoE rotation, again, is really, really huge here. Look, I'm up to about 80k here. I didn't even do my rotation properly, I don't think. Otherwise, I would have been at about 100k. But my item level right now is like 365. I'm not at 385. I'm not 390. I'm like 365. So this damage is going to be well above 100k in a real dungeon when you're pulling like 5 to 6 to 10 mobs together. The more the merrier with this build, with the Fire Nova build, because again, those Fire Nova explosions are going off and they're hitting multiple enemies, right? So the more the merrier there. The AoE burst is just really, really amazing. Again, you do your wolves into Primordial Wave, into that Lightning Bolt cleave, then into Fire Nova, then into Chain Lightning. So you kind of get like your Lightning Bolt cleave becomes your first big spender, and then you press Fire Nova, and it just gives you all your Maelstrom weapon stacks back right away, and then you press Chain Lightning. So you get 2 spenders like back to back, which gives you a lot of damage. It's surprising. That opening burst is incredibly surprising. I'll just say that. Again, a couple weaknesses of this build I'm going to say are going to be Maelstrom weapon stack generation in single target. Again, in AoE, your Fire Nova is now giving you tons of Maelstrom weapon stacks. So it's just like, boom. You press one button and you've got 5. So that's not an issue in AoE anymore. But in single target, you do have a bit of an issue because you're not getting as many eruptions. And so here's what you're going to want to do on a single target boss fight. Here's Heimdall. I'm going to want to utilize my Ice Strike. I've already pressed Ice Strike here. It's on cooldown. It generated a Maelstrom weapon stack for me. You can see I still haven't generated 5 Maelstrom weapon stacks here. There we go. I finally did. We're like 6 seconds into the fight already, and I haven't been able to use a spender yet. So that's kind of frustrating, but that's okay. Now, another important thing to remember, Hot Hand is big single target damage, Elemental Blast is big single target damage, and use your Ice Strike to give yourself Maelstrom weapon stacks. Now, right here, you can see the cooldown on my dogs. It's at 27 seconds. My Primordial Wave just came off cooldown. This is kind of perfect. So now I get to go P-Wave, and it's going to take 20 seconds off the dogs. Oh, I actually messed it up. I should have done it earlier. Anyway, I wasted a little bit there, but that's one of the things you can min-max on this build. Just keep that in mind. But that's okay. Now I press P-Wave into my wolves, and I've got a haste buff for a little while. Very, very good. Anytime in single target, you can use a spender. Use Elemental Blast if it's off cooldown. Use it. And use your Ice Strikes as well into your Frost Shocks. The Frost Shocks, again, are going to do a remarkable amount of damage. Like if I press Ice Strike into a Frost Shock, that Frost Shock's going to do like 12, 13k single target damage without critting. If it crits, it does like 25k. That's respectable damage, and it really, again, will shore up your single target damage and your Maelstrom weapon stack damage, or sorry, generation on a single target, which is what this build is lacking. It's lacking that single target Maelstrom weapon stack generation and a little bit of damage. So that's how single target works. If you get a Hot Hand proc, you must spend it immediately, okay? Keep pressing Lava Lash. When your LE Blast is ready to fire with 5 Maelstrom weapon stacks, launch that sucker. Whenever it's off cooldown, use Ice Strike to, again, give yourself another Maelstrom weapon stack generation for single target. In AoE, you don't use Ice Strike very much at all. Like, you can. It's a good filler spell in AoE, but you want to make sure you're maximizing your Fire Novas. You want to make sure you're maximizing your Chain Lightning. Crash Lightning is a really important button to press on AoE. Sundering is a really important button to press in AoE. So, like, you're a lot busier in AoE. You don't need to press Ice Strike until it's absolutely the last GCD that you have left, basically. So just keep that in mind. Let me work my way up to another boss fight here.
Okay, we're gonna kick Cleansing Flame there. Wolves are out.
So here, this is a big moment right here. My wolves are out, and I'm setting up my Primordial Wave window.
Now, spread this around. Get the Lightning Bolt off.
Here's a big Lightning Bolt. Watch this. Look at this Lightning Bolt. Look at that Lightning Bolt damage. 138k. Look at the damage. 44k, 66k, 138k. Like, the Lightning Bolt is insane.
There we go. Spread this around.
Look at this.
Lightning Bolt off.
Right now, I've done 2.93 million damage. 3.28 million damage right away.
Go.
The Lightning Bolt is so insane. And then you follow it up with a Fire Nova, of course. If you can. I don't think mine was on cooldown here, but once you're at if you're at 3 targets, keep pressing Chain Lightning, okay? Chain Lightning, Fire Nova. I did an LE Blast here. I probably shouldn't have. LE Blast is okay, but once you get to 2 targets, you want to press LE Blast, basically. So at 3 targets or above, Chain Lightning's pretty good.
We're going to hold on Wolves.
But if you're at 2 targets or below, I would do LE Blast. Now, here's a great moment where I could cast my wolves. Your wolves are coming off cooldown all the time. You need to press them all the time, except in a situation like this, because these enemies are about to die, right? So if I press my wolves right here, the enemies would die like 8 seconds later, and I wouldn't have them up for this guy. So I need to make sure that they're up. So here's a really great example of why this build, along with the Trinity build, are both very, very good as ranged builds as well. So this guy's going to do Sanctify. If you know this dungeon, this is Halls of Valor, you have to run away from this guy or you will die in melee. Now, what do? I take a step back. As I'm stepping back, I hit a Storm Strike here. I press Crash Lightning right here. A little bit of range there. Now, I have ranged abilities at my disposal. I have Fire Nova, I have Ellie Blast, and I have my Frost Shock that I've taken as well. So I'm starting with the Ellie Blast into a Primordial Wave actually was up again, so then I do Lightning Bolt. Then I can do Fire Nova right here, and then I can do Frost Shock on the way in. I didn't even need to, but you see what I'm saying? If you have to be away from the enemy for a little bit of time, it really helps you to have these extra spells. Fire Nova, Frost Shock, your Primordial Wave with the Lightning Bolt, your Ellie Blast. There's so much versatility in the Enhancement Shaman, you know, talents, is that you can do so many of your abilities from range, maintaining your damage even if you have to walk away from the boss. So very, very important there to remember that. Here's another boss fight. Again, you're prioritizing Ellie Blast. My Hot Hand proc is going right now. You want Hot Hand procs, Elemental Blast, and you want to use Ice Strike on single target to get the cooldown of the wolves back, to get you back to using your big spenders. Here's another Hot Hand proc. I must prioritize this. I got to walk out from Sanctify once again. So what do? Let's use our range tools. There's a Lightning Bolt. There's a Frost Shock. There's a Fire. I have Primordial Wave into a Lightning Bolt, into a Frost Shock again if I want to. I can do Fire Nova. There's lots of options here. I didn't even use half of them there, but if you need to back up to respect the mechanics, it's okay. You can still get your damage off. There's Herd You Down. Here's Fenrir. I choose to Lust here, and on a different key level, this might not work, or actually it might work even better. The healer here thought I was being a troll by lusting, but we actually get the entire duration of Lust into this first section of the Fenrir fight. He thinks it's too soon, but we get the entire Lust into this window except for 5 seconds. We do waste 5 seconds of it at the very end here, which that is definitely my bad. I'll take that on the chin, but realistically, it's actually not necessarily too bad to Lust there to get yourself through the first phase of the fight. Again, it's going to depend on your key. The reason I wanted to do there is because it would guarantee that we had Lust up at the end of the dungeon to fight Odin, and that's really important. One little cute thing I did here, when he spawns his ads, I hit a Fire Nova right here. So you can see I get lots of extra value out of my Fire Nova. That's something you can do to min-max your abilities on this build. You want to make sure that if there's ever a moment where you have AoE on a boss fight, press Fire Nova. Spread your Flame Shocks around, get that Fire Nova, because again, it's going to give you way more. The more targets you get eruptions from, the more Maelstrom weapon stacks that you generate, and that'll get you back to another big juicy Elemental Blast. So it's really going to increase your damage if you can try to Fire Nova. Right here, I'll do it again, I think. Oh no, it's off. It's on cooldown, so I kind of messed that up. But you want to try and do it as much as you possibly can. Same with Primordial Wave. If you can get a juicy Primordial Wave to hit more than one target on a boss fight, oh my god, you're laughing, man. It's so great because it just means that you're getting that big haste buff, and it's really going to be helpful for you. Let's get to the last boss here. I was going to talk about something here, but I'm just going to skip it for the sake of time. Let's get to the last boss fight. So here's Odin. So what do I think about this build? I think it has a lot of versatility. It has strong single target damage with Hot Hand windows, Elemental Blast, and now if you're able to do it, include Ice Strike. Ice Strike generates Maelstrom weapon stacks for you, gets you back to your big Elemental Blast. So strong single target damage, actually. Quite strong indeed. Amazing AoE damage. I love it. The big burst window that you have with your Primordial Wave Lightning Bolt cleave into a Fire Nova Chain Lightning combo. Insane opening burst combos with the wolves, and you'll basically get the wolves all the way back from scratch. Like, you'll summon the wolves, you'll do the combo I just talked about, and you'll get the wolves back in like 10 seconds. So really incredible burst windows there. You can do that every 45 seconds with Primordial Wave. You don't really have a cooldown on this build because your wolves are up all the time. That's what I love about Enhancement Shaman. You don't ever have like a 2-minute or a 3-minute cooldown. You just have wolves are up all the time. Primordial Waves up every 45 seconds. Go, go, go. So strong single target, strong AoE damage if you're going to include... Sorry, strong single target if you're going to include Ice Strike. Strong AoE damage all the time. It has incredible range, which means you can get out of mechanics and still do lots of damage. And the build scales really, really well with haste and mastery. Your Fire Nova cooldown actually will come down as you get more haste, as you get gear in the expansion. So that's it for the Fire build, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. This is a very strong Mythic Plus build. Maybe the strongest Mythic Plus build right now. Probably tied with the Hailstorm build. So let me know what you think in those comments down below. I love you all. I'll see you in the next one.